Okay. Marian Hossa is officially, unofficially. We've been over this before. Um, I went into I did a video about a year ago on the retirement of Marian Hossa when it was clear he was never going to play a game again. Skin disorder, allergy to his own equipment, the drugs he was taking to try to counter that were risking his health. For him to try a comeback, he'd be risking his life. So as much as I kind of snickered about it first, like really he's allergic to his equipment, they couldn't find anything better than that. And then I did some research, and sure enough, that's legit. That's the thing. Um, the Hawks have um, an interesting issue that's raised with this, and there are some of these contracts, and Roberto Luongo is another one of those contracts. And you can look over his career, and you've got the Ottawa and Atlanta part, and the only thing I'll say with the Ottawa and Atlanta part is this, because he'll officially retire in 3 years, so we're going to be back here to talk about this again in 3 years. Um, in Ottawa, he had a slowish start. His rookie year, he only had 15 goals in 60 games. His second year, he went up to 29 goals. They had some success in 03. I believe they got to the conference finals that year. But after the lockout, he ends up in Atlanta. And in Atlanta, he hit that next level where he hit 92 points the first season there. He had 100 points second season there. It was the only year he ever hit 100 points. And I really think that Atlanta not being able to keep him is part of what caused the Atlanta Thrashers to fall apart as a team and end up in Winnipeg. Everybody points at Kovalchuk, and that's fine. Kovalchuk was more the last straw. The first was Marian Hossa to me, really was. And selling their soul when they got that one division title didn't help either. But I digress. When he gets to Pittsburgh in 2008, plays 12 games in the regular season, gets 10 points. In the postseason, 20 games, 12 goals, 12 goals, 26 points overall. And the joke became this. He's catatonic almost on the ice, looking just so out of it after they lose that Stanley Cup, and ends up signing in Detroit because he wants to win. 2009 Detroit, scores 40 goals in 74 games, plays 23 games in the postseason, 6 goals, 9 assists, 15 points. They lose in the final to Pittsburgh. He signs a 12-year contract in Chicago. And that's what this video is really about, is the 12-year contract in Chicago. 2009, 2010, 54 games played, 51 points, 24 of those are goals. 24 games in the postseason, 3 goals, 12 assists, 15 points. He gets a Stanley Cup. So all the jokes about Hossa not winning Stanley Cups are gone, and he wins 2 more, one in 2013 and 2015. So a year ago, I said he's retired. And now, because he's told the newspaper that he's retired, it's all the news again. All those headlines. And I'm thinking, like when I saw people saying, "Are you gonna cover Marian Hossa retiring?" I'm like, I did that a year ago. We've already been through this. So rather than talk just about his career and what a great guy he was, because I did that a year ago, let us discuss why he can't retire. He can't. He has been telling people for a year he can never play again. It's just I find it kind of weird that it's news because we knew this a while ago. He has 3 years left on his contract and he can't retire. If he retires, cap recapture is a thing for Chicago. And I saw a couple of articles where they're like, oh, what happens if he retires and panic? And no, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. His cap hit is $5.275 million at the time he signed his 12-year contract. The last 4 years of his contract, $1 million each year. So what they did was they said, all right, we will pay you this, and then at the end of this contract, when we probably don't expect you to be playing anyways, we're going to pay you $1 million. That way it brings down the salary cap. That way we can have a better team around you at the start of your contract, and we can win a Stanley Cup. And Marian Hossa said, sounds good to me. He wins 3 Stanley Cups. Absolutely 100% worth it. Without those 4 years at the end at $1 million each, which is ridiculous, his contract's cap hit would have been $7.9 million. It's $5.275 million, so $2.7 million cap difference. That's huge. This is where I have a major issue with the cap, and it still kind of happens. Not as much. The cap recapture came out of the last after the last lockout, where the NHL was not happy. Here's my problem with it. My problem with it is this: coming out of the last, and there was this contract, there was Luongo's. Of course, there was the joke of a 17-year attempt by Kovalchuk there with the Devils. Holy crap! And then the subsequent huge deal that he got, anyways. These contracts are ridiculous. To me, 8 years is ridiculous too. You don't know what a player is going to be in 8 years. I don't care if it's Connor McDavid. You don't know what he's going to be in 8 years. I think 8 years is just insane. I think 4 years, 5 years is fine. 8 seems to be a little bit excessive. You look back at who the best players in the league were 8 years ago. You look at where the NHL was 8 years ago. You tell me that anybody who signed a contract then, you'd know what they're going to be now. It's very difficult. Except Crosby. I will say Crosby's long-term contracts make sense. But he also doesn't do this. There's no huge drop at the end of a contract. So the NHL penalized contracts that their own owners signed off on. And here's the reason why. Because they saved on the cap, they could get other players. And this is where it's weird. There are still contracts out there where a guy is getting paid, say, $9 million, but the cap hit is maybe $7 million. And when you have guys that you're paying up front big money, well, think about it. You're on the free agent market. And you're offered a contract by Chicago, and you're offered a contract by Florida. Florida being a team that, of course, doesn't have the same amount of cash flow as Chicago. Both contracts have a cap hit of $5.3 million. You're going to make your cap hit's $5.3 million. They're both 8-year contracts. Chicago's front ends it. You're starting at $9 million per year in Chicago. Florida, it's just a flat 5.3. The cap hit's the same. The contract's a little different. And you may be looking at that going, well, the last couple of years, I may not even be playing anymore. The Luongo contract that he still has in Florida, it still makes Canuck fans nervous because if Luongo retires, that cap penalty goes over to Vancouver because Vancouver signed that contract. So what the Blackhawks can do, and this is again where the salary cap just baffles me, they could take this cap. Now, I'm not sure. I think they're able to do this because I know it was done with Chris Pronger. I'm pretty sure they can take that $5.275 million in cap space and trade it because they're only paying $1 million over the last 4 years. Meaning, if somebody picks up this contract, they're only paying Hossa 3 more years at $1 million, but the cap hit is $5.275 million. That sounds like an Arizona contract, where Arizona would pick this up, and okay, look, we're up to the cap, but we're actually not spending anywhere near it. And this is where the haves and the have-nots, even in a salary cap world, show up. He will go on long-term IR. Because for the next 3 years, the Chicago Blackhawks pay a $4.3 million salary cap penalty if he retires, and they can't do anything with that penalty. They can't trade it. They can't do anything with it. So he'll go on long-term injured reserve, but there's only a certain amount over the cap you can go during the offseason, and you can't put a guy on long-term injured reserve for the offseason. So it does kind of handcuff the Chicago Blackhawks, who are a team that just missed the playoffs, and they're looking to do a quick retool and get back in there, while guys like Kane and Taves are still two of the more productive players in the league. Taves has fallen off a bit. Kane is still in his prime. You want to strike while that iron's hot. So they're going to want to bring players in. They're going to want to get up to the cap. Chicago will always be a salary cap team. They make a ton of money. They can afford to do this kind of a contract, whereas a lot of smaller market teams can't. So the NHL does its best to protect itself from itself. And that's why Hossa can't retire. And that's where there's a giant hole in this. This is the next thing. The next big CBA thing could very well be, hey, wait, that guy is retired. And the owner coming back going, well, no, he's not retired because we can't let him retire because then we can't get long-term injured reserve for him. And the NHL saying, you know what, this is stupid. And it is kind of stupid. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.